All right, get started. So first of all, we're going to take a look at automating SSIS package creation with the power of BIML. So, my name's Dan Clark. I'm from, you can probably tell, I'm from the United States. I live right outside, well not right, about an hour outside of Philadelphia, so most people know where Philadelphia is. If I tell you where I'm really from, you'll never know. So. But anyhow, that's where I go if I want to have fun. So I've been doing .NET development and BI development for about 15 years now. And one of the things I do is I do a lot of SSIS ETL work. And I'm a consultant, so I come in and I do the whole gamut of architecture down to the actual coding and everything. So one of the things I wanted to do was I stumbled upon this BIML, and the reason why I did was because of the fact that I was doing SSIS development, and I was doing code and the visual drag and drop and all that stuff. And then what happened was it was like, well, yeah, you make one, and then once you make one, you say, oh, this isn't too bad, I like the interface and everything like that, but then they say, okay, I want 200 more of these tables loaded. And you think, crap, I'm going to be here for 2 weeks. So, and so what I said to myself is there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a way to generate this code, and so that's exactly what BIML does. So some of the things that I don't like about SQL Server, well, that's not one of them. That's okay. It's a highly graphical interface, so again, it's great for creating one-offs or something like that. But most of the stuff we do is the same thing over and over and over again. You know that. So you load dimension one, dimension type 1, you've loaded 1,000. So why can't we just speed this up and make it so that we can drive this through metadata and that kind of thing? So the files are DTSX files, and I don't know if anybody's cracked those open. Has anybody cracked open one of those files? Yeah. Okay. And let me just get a quick background because I want to do that. How many of you you're obviously all SSIS developer? Is there anybody who's never used SSIS? Okay, good. You're in the right place. How many people here also code C# code? Yeah. Okay. VB, you're fine. You can do VB. And there's nothing wrong with VB, by the way. I'm not one of these guys who's going to shame you or anything like that. I started my life in VB and then went to VB.NET, and now I do C# just because I can charge more money. So it has nothing to do with the program itself. Okay, so anyhow, if you crack open one of these files, one of the things you're going to notice, it mixes the code and not the graphical layout in the same file. Okay, which to me is craziness. Okay, so if you start going in there and trying to do it on your own, like you copy and paste one over and then you start to try and edit it, you start blowing up the visual interface, you start crashing things and all that. So it's really not good as far as that goes. The other thing that's really crazy about that is it does not work well with source code management systems. Because every time you open that up and you drag something, what happens?
It's a new file.
Yeah, the files change. So now when I go up and I put it in there and then I go to, somebody else goes to take it down and says they're not matched. Even though I didn't do anything, I opened it up just to take a look at something and then closed it back down, it's going to say, okay, your files changed because of all kinds of crap. So has anybody tried to work with this in a group development environment? What's that?
Have to lock the file out.
Oh yeah, it is a nightmare because it just trying to get the files to sync and then some other guy taking it out. A Visual Studio itself file system, using it with check-in, check-out used to be crazy because of the project file got changed every time somebody checked it out. It actually checked it out, and I think they fixed that, but this thing doesn't work at all with code, having a group development effort. So, and it's hard to implement frameworks and templates because framework and template says, okay, we're going to have this set of objects that are in there, and then you're going to download that and then start developing using that, and you're going to make changes. So what happens when you go to, let's say you set up a template, and the template has a source file or a SQL source on it, and you got to change all those. So you're going to go from one table to another. So you're going to change it and hit, instead of your dummy table, you're going to hit your customer table. What's it got to do?
Change all the metadata for data flows.
What's that?
Change all the metadata for your data flows.
Yeah, all that metadata, and then you get all those red things popping up. You change one, you gotta go every one and open it up. Again, they've developed it in 2012 version. It's a little bit templates and frameworks and so forth. So it doesn't work well with that. Now, don't get me wrong, I think it's a great product. It just doesn't work well for massive amounts of code generation. Okay, so why do we like business intelligence markup language? Well, it's a declarative XML dialect. So everybody here knows XML. What is XML?
Structured text, readable.
What's that?
Human readable.
Human readable. There's also, it looks a lot like doing what kind of development? It does look a lot like XAML. I love XAML code. And, but in this case, it's actually going to end up being, remember there's tags and then you do, it's all meta-driven type stuff. So you can, like XAML, it's meta-driven. So you put in the tag and then you say the name. It's very user-friendly as far as that goes. So we can use this to specify the BI assets that we're using and the metadata. And what happens is it actually generates compiled code, and it's usable in the standard SSIS toolset. So one of the things that happens here is when I make a change and I say, okay, instead of going to the customer table, go to the products table. I don't have to update the metadata because what happens? When I make the change, what's the next thing I'm going to do? Compile it. It generates the metadata. There is no updating of the metadata. It would actually just generate the metadata for me from the start all the way to the end. So let's say I have a customer there, and then I wanted to put in a new column, something like that. I just plop the new column in. I say compile, and it replaces the old file. So and with the new, so there's no metadata updating. It's actually creating it all from scratch and from there. All right, that's key. That's a key part here. It works well with source control, merging, and file compare tools because inside here there is no manipulation of the visual interface. In other words, there's nothing that says, okay, we're going to move this, position this over here, and then it has to update that kind of thing. It's all generated with XML dialect. So when you change something, you're actually changing something that you meant to change. So when somebody else comes up and gets there and brings it down, then they're going to get the change and they can merge it in. The other thing that's great about it is what kind of file is this that we're merging in? It's a text file. Okay. So text files are the best files for source control systems. All right. And then one of the things we have here is BIMLScript. So with BIMLScript, that's where we're going to take it one step further, and I'm going to show you all this. But with BIMLScript, that allows for easy metadata-driven development. So that's where the actual power comes into this. So we can combine the use of the BIML language with scripting language. So you can say for each, and then build tables and that kind of thing. All right. And it actually works. So how many people here have done ASP.NET development? Okay. Well, if you have, and you're used to mixing ASP.NET code with C# code as you generate the page, then this is going to be a piece of cake for you to pick this up. The other guy, it's not hard. It's actually a very easy concept to learn. And VB, so you can use C# or VB. All right, so it's easier to implement frameworks and templates because when you pull it down in your framework and template, then what you can do is just start adding to it or replacing certain things, and it's not gonna have to do all that updating, or it's not gonna get confused when it tries to build it and that kind of thing. You guys just ask me, if you have a question, just holler it out too. I'll save it for the end. All right, so how does this work? Well, you go out there and you get yourself a bids helper. Has anybody used bids helper? Got one? Yeah. So to get this to work, the free version, okay, so there's two versions. There's a free version and then there's a pay-for version that you can get. It's about $1,000, which really is not that bad unless you're a one-man shop who has no funding except for a credit card. Then you're okay. And you go to your manager and say, I want to spend $1,000. It's going to save you, this week alone will save you 20 hours of my time, development time. He's going to say, oh yeah, the return on investment's there. So, but we're going to look at the free one today, and you can do a lot with the free one. So if you want to do a proof of concept to show them, wow, and then you want to go say, well, we can get everybody on this with this other version. And I'll show you that too, where to get that. But you have BI Bids Helper. Okay, so this is something you're going to download off of, what's the site? Codeplex? Yeah, Codeplex. So Codeplex, it's out there. And you just download it. It's going to be a add-in to SSIS, and actually it's an add-in to the BI suite. And even if you never use BIML after this, you say, yeah, I'm going to go try it, and then you're like, that guy was crazy, I'm not going to do it. But anyhow, go look at this Bids Helper. It gives you so much stuff that's not built into the Microsoft Dev Tools that you can use. It has stuff for SSIS, the tabular mode. If anybody's getting into tabular, does that. It has stuff for just maintaining databases. It has all kinds of reports that you can pull out. You can do stuff like what's the differences between two different versions, like of a warehouse. Somebody changed the dimension table and you have it's 300 columns, which it never should have been, but it always is. Then you can figure it out and who made the change and all that stuff. So anyhow, Bids Helper is going to help us do this. So that's the engine. It's going to have the engine that's going to compile all this up. So you need that installed. And then you're going to have, it's going to take your developer code, and the developer code is going to be inputted with BIML and this BIMLScript, and then it's going to end up, if there's any shared scripts that are built into it that it needs, and then it sends it to the BIML engine, and then it comes out, and it's going to be, for us, it's going to be ETL, SSIS. You can also do database schemas and T-SQL and all that stuff with it too. Okay, so setting up the development environment. When you go out there, you download and install Bids Helper. And then the next thing to do, you want to enable IntelliSense using, there's a BIML XSD file. Okay. And so if you plop that in, you can then have IntelliSense. And then what's going to happen is you're going to have new menus added for to the SQL Server data tools for adding BIML files, and then there's an error checking and generating packages. Okay, so those are the steps you want to do. Really install the bits helper, then enable IntelliSense, and then open it up and see what's going on. So then to create a package, what you're going to do is you just go in, once you have all that installed, you're going to say, okay, add a BIML file, and it'll add a BIML file for you. You add your markup, and see, you can see here as an example, the markup, here's the namespace. Verigence is that company I was talking about before. The guy that created all this stuff worked for Microsoft, was working on this. I think they probably axed the program on him, and then he decided to go out and do it on his own and develop the BIML and this Verigence. And there's not, we were talking earlier, there's not a whole lot out there on it. So if you really want to get into this, you're going to kind of dig for examples and some trial and error and that kind of thing. But having said that, I think it's going to, again, make you look, you know, you can do it two ways. You can say, okay, damn it, you got to do this 100 packages, we're going to give you 2 weeks. I could do that in 1 day. And be a hero that way, or I could say, okay, yeah, sure. And then the first day I get it all done, the next, 13 days I just hang around, play with stuff. So I've done it both ways. So anyhow, you're gonna add the markup, check for errors. You always want to check for the errors on there, and then they generate the package. So what we're going to do, here's a typical one to start out. This would be a simple, kind of a simpler one. We're going to do is loading staging tables. So this is one of the things you do over and over and over again. So the first thing you're going to do is truncate staging and then load staging. So in the data flow part of it, you're going to get over here. I'm going to say source data, then I just threw in a component to derive a column to show you how to do that. And then, because that's typically you may have to derive a column or clean a column or something like that. And then you're going to load it into a staging table. So that's what we're going to do here first, is we're going to show you how to work with just the BIML. And the best way to learn this stuff is to start out small and then start building. So okay, and the other thing I want to show you, this is my email. So bits helper, okay, there's actually, the one I'm using is 1.66. So go up there's 1.66. And it's just a download, exe, download, install, it's very easy, friendly, and all that. There is actually another version came out last week, wouldn't you know? So instead of doing what I normally do, which is try and install it and then have everything blow up on me, I decided to not use that one. But if I was more you guys, I would probably go out, well, I shouldn't say that, this one's still beta. But it looks like it's pretty solid beta, so if you want to start it, you can go to that one. The only reason, how many of you are doing 2014 right now, development, SSIS 2014? If you're not doing SSIS 2014, stick with the 1.66. The 1.7 actually comes in, you're going to see a bug in mine when I pull it up, because it actually is going to produce 2012 files and then upgrade them because I'm using 2014. In the 1.70, it actually produces 2014 native files, so you don't have that. So right now it's just a little annoying, no big deal, okay? Because it just you have to wait for the upgrade. Okay. Now, if you come out here, and I just didn't want to show you this, the features. Notice this is BID's helper, so it's a lot more than just BIML. You notice analysis, services, multi.
We're seeing that on there.
Oh wait, yeah, somebody should be telling me. All right, I'm trying to figure out what's going on. What did my machine? Guys are very polite. Took you that one.
You're in England now.
Hey, man. Yeah, if I was in Philly, man, they would have been all over me. Are you an idiot? Let's see. For some reason when I do that, instead of duplicating it, it extends the displays. Now we can go over here. Okay, so BID's helpers, here it is. Went to the documentation. The analysis service is multi-dimensional. See some of the features here. So we all do. You probably both, do the whole stack like I do. You can look at measure group health, check, that kind of thing. Printer friendly, dimension usage, all kinds of stuff to come in here and look at. Here's the tabular, which I'm into. And then integration services, here's all the different things you can do. And there's actually reporting services too. So it's going to put in a lot of stuff into your bids to help you, create the BI packages. So now over here, I already have it installed, and you're going to see that if I go, and the reason why I know it's installed, if I right click on the project, you'll notice here I can now add a new BIML file. Okay, so install, add a new BIML file. If I add a new BIML file, it shows up under the miscellaneous. The first time you do it, this is going to be, not expanded, so you don't know where to go. And you start adding and adding and adding, and then all of a sudden you expand it and you say, oh my God, there's 15 of them in there. Okay, so if we take a look at it, I have one here, load staging. Okay, so I just add BIML file, rename it, and all that. So in the basic BIML file, you get the namespace and the variables, and then the slash BIML. If I come up here, you'll notice now I'm starting to have all kinds of different stuff in there. So how did I do this? I just come in there and click, start a tag. And you'll notice now I have that auto fill here and IntelliSense and all that. So we can start making our BIML tag. Now, how did I get that? This is actually important because I don't want you to have to suffer through not having IntelliSense. So underneath here, there it is, this XSD download. So if I go to that, this is actually out on this BIMLScript website. So there's a BIMLScript website and there's a variance website. I have all these listed at the end of the slides, so you don't have to write them all down. But if you come back and you look down here, it says, okay, IntelliSense if you want it, and then it tells you where to throw these in. So you can throw it in the file depending on which one you're using. So here's BIDS 2012. Here's, or if you don't call it BIDS anymore. Anyway, I still do. SSDT 2012 for 32. No, 64-bit, and here's 32-bit. And if you use 2014, you download the other one. I'm sure you could pretty much figure out where it is. So you just go and plop it in there, and then all of a sudden your IntelliSense starts working. So that's one of the things you want to do. Go look down on BIMLScript and the resources, and then there's this .xsd file. All right, so let's take a look at what I did here. So the first thing I did, I'm going to say, okay, give me some connections. So in this connection, can you all see the code? Good. Big enough. So in the connection, it's just what you would think. So we would have a connection, a name, or I just put source and target, and then the provider that you want to use for the connection. And then if we look at some other things in there, and again, I use IntelliSense to figure out everything. So you'll notice here there's a delay validation if you want to turn on or off delay validation, which is actually a pretty good thing to turn off once you know it works, or turn on, excuse me. And then if you look at max active connections, retain the same connections, so you get everything that you have that you could set using that visual, you can set using the BIM. Okay. So then once we create that, we have this database. So we have the connections, now we have the database. So I have two databases, ODS, and then the connection name to that is the source, and then the DW would be the target. And then we have schemas. So you go down and you can develop and work with schemas too. So inside that database in staging, ODS, I have the schema named STG. You'll notice in schema, in the DW, I'm using the default schema DBO. I wouldn't really have to put the schema name in there because it is the default schema. All right. Then, once you set that up, what's the next thing you're going to do? Well, you're going to create a package, right? So I come down here and I have this packages tag. So inside my packages tag is where I'm going to start creating my my packages. So there's a package name. I'm going to say the load staging tables. Constraint mode, okay, is linear. So what does that mean? What do you think the constraint mode means? Without reading.
Just the normal. So all your tasks on the control flow, as you've introduced them here, they'll just follow through like that in the control flow.
Right. So what it's going to do is going to connect all my tasks together. Okay. So it's going to be a linear path, depending on the order that you put them in the markup is the order they're going to show, as opposed to what else can we do? Parallel, so you can have everything. So some things I would want to do parallel, some things I would want to do linear. Okay, so the other thing that you notice here is...
What about if decisions can you do, if do this?
Yeah, you'll see that.
Okay.
So remember, I'm doing everything to start out basic and then build on.
Yeah.
So by the end here, you're going to go, wow. Okay, so right now you're going But if you look at this, the other thing that's cool here is we get the help stuff too. You know, if you say, well, what's this for, and you hover over it, it's very useful information that we have here. Of course, name would not be very useful, that kind of thing. So IntelliSense is how I learn every language I create. People that just do it on touchpad, I don't know how they live. So anyhow, now I come in here and I look at it. So my source. So now I have an OLEDB source, and I'm going to do direct input. Okay, so if we notice here, we have the source. Let me see what else we can throw in there. So command timeout you can set. You can say validate external metadata again. So I would probably turn that off once I throw it in production. That kind of thing. Default code page, so you know, that kind of thing. And then if I come down here, you'll notice. So what are the subtags in this? So one of the things you can do is you can set. One of the things you want to say is what are the columns you're having. Direct input, external table input, parameters. You can do it all. Variable input. Any of that stuff. So as you know, Some of this, you can't use both because it's one or the other. So since I'm using direct input, I'm just gonna do that. Say, okay, select customer alternative key, first name, last name from dim customer. All right. So then what we're gonna do is, this is for later, I'm gonna show you how to do that. And then we're gonna come down here and do derived columns. Name always get full name. And then we have the columns. So then you have the columns in here. The column name is full name. The data type is string. The length is 101. So anything you would normally set with a column, you can do there. So again, precision, replace existing, that kind of. And then the only bad thing about it is, and it's not really that bad, but you don't have the IntelliSense for the actual. What do they call that language? You know, it's not C#. It's not C.
Expression.
It's
Yeah.
expression language.
Yeah.
It's driving crazy. It should be, you know, it should be. Why not just use C#? Sure. So anyhow, or V. So we put the column name in there, first name, last name. Just going to concatenate the two together. I just wanted to show you something simple. And then we're going to throw into the destination table. Here, connection equals target. Use fast load, right? So remember all those things that you're taught to do to make these things run fast. They're all there. Keep identity, fast load options you want, check constraints, turn them on, turn them off, that kind of thing. Batch size, you get all that. And then we're going to do external table output. And then here, notice this is the only quirky one, is you have to write in the table name, you have to include, there is no tag for schema. So when I first did this, I thought, well, where's the schema tag? There is none. You include it with the table name. And then down here, I just put in source column, target column. Okay, they don't have to be named the same, I just happen to have them named. All right? So now I'm ready to go. So this thing, the first thing I'm going to do here is, I'm going to come over and I'm going to say load staging BIML. I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to say check BIML for errors. All right. So check BIML for errors.
See if your BIML file goes.
Yeah. So then it's going to say no errors or warnings were found. Okay, and I'll show you later an error warning is found. It's not real great. You still got to go searching, that kind of thing, but you know there's an error, so that's better than nothing. So anyhow, so no errors or warnings were found. So I say okay, then I'm ready to go and generate the SSIS package. So go ahead and generate the package. And actually, it doesn't tell you you're done, but if you notice, I can expand that's done. And here's load staging tables. Open that up. And this is where it's converting it from 2012 to 2014. If you're using 2012, you won't get this. And so I said, okay. And there it is. So we have the visual. And now they're completely separate. There's no connection between the two. So it actually created this DTX file. So I can move this DTX file around, load staging. I can come in here and do, let's see, get full name. And I can change it to last name. Whoops. Oh, I still have that. See, so now, and what I could do is I could rename this and say, let's say tables 2. All right, and so now the next time I am going to, let me close this and save. Yes. And so now, since I renamed it, there's no danger of this thing getting overwritten. So all I'm going to do is do BIMLS, load staging, generate SSIS package, and you'll notice here's my original one. It's going to upgrade it, and I'm going to say, okay, what's this one? And this is my original. All right. Now the reason I showed you that is because one of the scenarios I do a lot is I have to, I refuse to maintain packages. That's why I'm a consultant. Come in, do my work, give it to you, and say, okay, you do the boring stuff. All right. So what happens is most people don't know BIML. So I'll go and create all these packages in BIML, and I generate them, and then I just give them the DTSX package and say, here you go. Go deploy them and maintain them. They'll never have to know it was created by BIML. There's no, there's no dependencies at all on the BIML. It's just recreating the file.
How we reverse engineer? Like from the package creating the BIML file.
You buy Verigent. So if you want to do the reverse engineer, the Verigent's product with the $1,000 product I was talking about, that actually you take and do graphical interface, and it spits out the BIML code. So yeah, so that's awesome. So one of the things you can do, and that could say, well, that's why I would spend $1,000 on it, considering the time that I would save. My time's fairly expensive, so I'm going to save a lot of that money, and that's why I would buy that. Okay, to reverse engineer. You can't reverse engineer with a free. All right, but that's a good scenario to do. So somebody gives you this monstrous package, and you want to create it for 5 different, 5 different use cases. I would say reverse engineering.
What's the name of the license product again?
It's a Verigence. So if you go out to Verigence, actually if you notice the namespace here,
Right.
Verigence is the company that is keeping this up. Okay, so the next thing then, so we know how to do, was there any questions on that? So let's say I wanted to, let me just show you how easy this is to, let's say I want to go in here and I want to do staging demo. Get rid of that one. And let's say here I want to do a row count. So doing the row count, there's how many, here's the row count guy we're going to have. And so we're going to say name. Row count. And then you have to tell it the variable that you're going to use. So the variable we're going to load to, I'm just going to call it row count.
You don't have to declare that row count variable beforehand, will it handle it for you?
Well, since I didn't declare it, it's no big deal because what is the variable here? What data type?
Integer?
No, no, right here.
String.
It's a string, right? So, until I run this, if I ran it right now, it's taking a string in, it's gonna say row count, it's gonna look for a row count variable. It would say, actually this is a good place to put it. We're gonna say, let's go ahead and do check BIML for errors. What?
That's the wrong bit.
No. Actually, was that the wrong one?
You're in my
Here we go. And there we go.
Oh.
Could not resolve reference to row count of type variable base, variable name, row count. Now, you know, my question is, if you tell me that, why not just throw it in there? That's what I've always thought about this. Any kind of debugging. But. So if I try to pass an object that wasn't declared yet, it would tell me right here. But since it's a string, doesn't know until it tries to compile what the heck's going on. So then what we're going to do is come down here and we're going to add that variable. So to add variables, it's very intuitive. So I'm going to say variables, and then I'm going to say variable, and name. And then data type. You said it was going to be int 32, right? And then don't need anything else. So then I have to initialize it to 0. Alright.
There are an option to scope for the variable.
What's that?
A scope for the variable. You know, like because you can scope the variable on a certain task or scope it on the package itself.
Yeah, so we can do it here. Since I did it in the package,
Oh, right.
it's
so
scoped by the package. If I did it out here in the packages, it would be scoped for the project. See what I'm saying?
That worked.
So it depends on where you put it.
Yeah.
Right, so since I nested this inside the package, that's a good question. Since I nested this inside the package, it threw it in there, and it's package scope.
But you also have a namespace.
Yeah, you could use a namespace, and so there's any option you can do in Development Studio you can actually do, and Visual Studio you can do here. So there's no limitations as far as that. So let's see if I did everything right. Check BIML for errors. Let's see where it is. Row count.
You don't need to give it the scope for the row count itself.
Oh, this has to be for scope. Scope. Okay, so let's do it. Check something.
User level.
Ah! It's those little things. They're really... Yeah, remember, it's not asking down here, it's asking up here. And why did I have to use user instead of, what's the other one, system?
System.
Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of system already built in, so it needs to know user. That was actually good. I tried it.
So on purpose.
That's a learning. learning. Check for errors. There we go. That's what I like to see. And then generate the package. Now this time it's going to overwrite because I already had one there. So actually, do you really want to overwrite it? I see. Yeah. Now let me give you a little hint here. I've always found if you have the package open in Visual Designer and you try and generate it, it crashes Visual Studio. Okay. Whether or not they fix that in 1.7, I haven't tested yet, but I always keep them closed when I'm going to generate. Okay. And so that's just one of those things I learned as I was playing with this stuff. So now it's going to update it. You know, so we have load staging. Here's our row count. If I go to variables, let's see, here's our row count. All right. So that's pretty good stuff, but I mean, you're still, you know, kind of creating everything by hand. So one-offs, one at a time. So let's take a look at using BIMLScript, which is really where this shines. So when we talk about using BIMLScript can be either used as embedded C# or VB.NET code. Now the only thing you have to do is the default is C#, so you have to put in and I don't have it here, I should have added it, is there's a declaration that says what language you're going to use. Okay, so you're going to say, it's an @ and then you say VB.NET, okay, instead of C#. Similar to ASP.NET model code embedded in HTML, so if you kind of like that model, some people pick up on it very quickly, some people are kind of mystified by it. The nice thing is I started back in the ASP days when that's all you had. So if you look at, there's an extensive API, so one of the things you notice here is there's this API that you can use that Vergence has released. So they have an extensive API, I'll show you that a little bit. It gives you methods for doing some quick schema stuff. Very nice. And then you'll notice down here, so use the Mist Cloud application for formatting, copy and paste to VS, because one of the things that's annoying about this, and I don't think they have any plans to fix it, because you will actually buy the Vergence product, is this is going to screw up the compiler of Visual Studio, and so you're going to get a lot of squigglies and all kinds of stuff. There is no, you know, where they tell you you're doing it wrong and all that stuff. So here you're going to notice I'm going to have packages just like you did. So there's my BIMLScript code, but I'm going to then embed. So for this example, for in I equals 1, 2, I is less than or equal to 5, I plus plus, then package name, and then what you're going to do. So this is for embedding a line of code. You start out with the less than, then a sharp sign, end it with a sharp sign, and greater than. And then what you're going to do is notice this name here, we're actually having in quotes, so this is the string, but inside that string we're going to do a replacement. And so it's going to embed whatever the value is for I as a string right in there. Okay? And a data flow, and then we have to end it. So down here is the ending tag packages. So that's very simplistic look at how you can actually end up using this code to automate something. So let's take a look at building up some BIMLScript here and doing our automation. right, so there's a couple things I'm going to illustrate with this, is the fact that you can split your code. One of the first things I'm going to show you here is you can split your code. Quicker this time. But you're still nice. Really. I'm used to tougher crowd. All right, so figure out why my computer does it. All right, so I've brought up a second project here, so we're going to build on this. So, like I was saying, the first thing I wanted to do was show you how we're going to spread this out into 3 different files here. So you can actually have more than one file and generate one package from more than one file. So you can kind of organize your code a little bit. So the first one I'm going to do is do the create database schema. And so I'm going to come in here and do, okay, the BIML connections, just like we saw before. So here's the DW connection, data warehouse connection name, staging, and then DBO for the different schemas. You'll notice this template at template tier equals 1. Okay, this is where I'm saying, okay, this will be the first one that gets run. Okay, now if you have 2 files that can be run at the same time, you can put them at the same tier level. So you say tier 1 for both of them. So if it doesn't matter the order, then you're fine if it matters the order. So in this particular case, I have to do this one first because I'm setting up the connection. And then over here, I'm doing the setting up the tables that I'm going to use. So these are going to be the product table update and the customer table update. All right. So this shows you where I'm actually building some schema. So I'm going to say, okay, the table name, schema name, notice there. And now this is really important. They build in as annotations. So annotations are, you can have as many as you want. And so you say, what type is it? It's an annotation tag. And then the name of the tag is table type. So notice I'm saying in my annotation that this is going to be a staging table as opposed to if I was building a whole bunch of tables and one of them could be a dimension table, right? So I use the annotations to, for later on when I'm developing my code, I'll check what the annotation is for that thing, do one thing and do another thing. All right. So then down here, you'll notice we're just setting up the column names and then everything you're going to have is null or false and so forth. So it's just like doing it in anything you have to set for your like SQL code or T-SQL code to create it, you can do that. All right, and then down here I have add template tier 2. Now one of the reasons I have this down here and I also have it in comment tags is so it doesn't mess up my IntelliSense and all that.
So even though it's in a comment, it's still going to get read by the BIML engine whenever you pass it in?
Yeah, the compiler's still going to get that. And if you put it at the top, if you don't wrap it and put it at the top, it really screws things up. Okay, so that's one of those tips that a lot of you just kind of learn after a while. And then here's where the fun starts. So here's where we're going to go and say, okay, we're going to take a look at the package and we're going to actually end up deploying each of these and we're going to loop through here. So one of the annoying thing is you'll notice I have 18 errors and 2 warnings, but there's nothing at all wrong with this code. Okay, so that gets really annoying really quick. So what I found was there's this Mist Cloud application. So I launched my Mist Cloud, and where to get this is out on that BIMLScript file again, and if you go to the BIMLScript, now this is tricky, you're gonna wanna write this down. Because I didn't know this. So it says, go to develop, so it might take a little while to launch this thing up. And now if you come down, so this is the same thing, only it's a web resource. But if you come down here and you right click on this export HTML, you get this, since I already have it installed, it says remove. It'll say add a desktop application or something. There's no button anywhere. It's just like hidden. It's like an Easter egg. And I was going through all the blog sites one time, and somebody mentioned it like offhandedly. I was like, "You're kidding me." So you want to do that, and that way, if you're not on, I mean, it doesn't matter really if you're always hooked up to the internet. But I kind of like to have the desktop application myself. So now what I can do is I can take and copy this. Go to my Mist application and paste it in, and now I can read it. Alright. So, I mean, there's no autocomplete or anything like that here, but it puts it in a form that I can actually figure out what's going on with all this squigglies in Visual Studio. So if we take a look at what's going on, you'll notice that we have for each var table in root node.tables. All right, so the root node is the node for all my script here. Since I'm going to compile all this together, it actually knows, the fact that there's a root node, and we identified those tables for that root node. Okay, so we have those. And so it's going to loop through those tables, and right now we have 2 tables, right? But you could see where I could actually add on that other thing. I could just add 50 tables, and it would go through and spit out this code for each 50 tables. So you could say, okay, give that to one of your junior developers and say, here, fill in the rest of this code. Go out the TC and write it in there, and it's actually not too bad. And then you'll notice I said there was built-in. There's built-in methods and APIs and everything. What's the built-in API I'm using here, or the built-in method, excuse me?
Yeah, drop and create.
Yeah, drop and create DDL. Okay, that's awesome, because what's going to happen is it's going to actually generate that for me. Okay, so when we run this, so now that I know I like it, I can't say, okay, run here. I'm going to bring it back in here, and now you'll notice I can highlight all this, and I'm going to check for errors, just to make sure. Okay, and then I'm going to run this thing, generate SSIS packages. Like that. I wish it said I'm done, because I usually wait around for a while. So if I open this up, I should get, you notice here is create the BIM customer update. Notice there's the create and drop off of my BIML. So, it saves me a lot of time there. Right, and notice what we did here is if we look back in the package constraint mode parallel, notice I set the constraint mode parallel because I want these to run in parallel. There's no dependencies on it. Make sense? All right, so that is a real time saver. So, I think my rest of my stuff is still, oh, here's my metadata. Yeah, let's go through that. So, just a couple points about metadata-driven package creation. So, it increases standardization, it decreases development time a lot, easily implement frameworks, increase manageability, and reduces overhead of changes. So, if you say I want to make a change, let's say you have released 50 packages, and we all know, they changed something. In the old, if without BIML, you would have to touch all 50 of those packages. And then you would have to go down through and update all that metadata. This way, you can just add it to the base packet, the base BIML file, and hit generate, and it'll generate all of them. Just put them out like that. So I'm going to show you how we can actually go through and create metadata-driven packages. So what I mean by that is, if I look in, let me do this. Bring up okay, so here I'm going to create my tables, and notice here in create tables, what I'm doing is I'm actually going out and I'm going to hit a connection to a what I call a catalog, okay, which is going to hold my metadata. So inside of, let me fire up SQL just so we can show you what I'm doing here. So this is just my own, it's not a SSIS config database that was installed with SSIS, it's just it's my own SSIS config. And now you're going to really see some powerful stuff. So I come in here and I say, okay, I'm going to put up a database. Inside this database, I'm going to say tables to DW is my table there. I'm going to select it. I'm using this for a couple of things. So if we come in here, we'll notice I have the data warehouse table name. I have a flag saying whether or not I want to generate the staging or not. And then I have a source table name, which is going to come out of my ODS database, customer. And then we'll get to these further, but this is our later. But here I have source key columns, attribute columns that I have, and then what type of ETL load do I want. Okay, and then generate package or not. For right now, we're just going to look at these two columns here, or actually these three columns here. All right. So anytime I want to add another table, I don't even have to crack my BIML code. I just come out here and say, okay, I'm going to do dim employees. Add the source key columns and the attribute columns. All right. So how did I do that? Well, you'll notice here I have close my list. So the first thing I do is I import a namespace. You'll notice the namespace is schema management. Okay, so this is where I'm going to get all kinds of again, methods and so forth. I have a command, string command, select DW table name from dbo.tables to DW, where generate staging is equal to 1. I have a string connection, so just your normal connection. And then I have a table names to import. Actually, that belongs back to that. So I'm going to do table names to import, and it's external data access .get data table, and then I'm passing it to connection to command, and then I'm going to return rows of type. So there's system.data rows, and then select, and then select the first column and move it to a string. So that's actually some pretty, if you're not into C#, that's some pretty wicked code there. But really, what am I using there? Does anybody know what language I'm using? Link. So I'm using link to select and throw that into a, really just a list.
You need to import that, the namespace as well.
Yeah, so you need that import namespace up on the top, because that's what gives me this external data access object.
You don't need it for link as well.
Well, yeah, you don't need the link namespace.
Do you not?
No, because this internally uses,
Oh, right.
I don't know if that's right.
Because normally in C#.
Yeah, you'd have to do the link,
Yeah.
but somewhere it's already
Right.
referenced. That's a good question. I didn't even think of.
So that,
Somewhere it's getting referenced or it wouldn't run.
Yeah.
so could that, Dan, sorry, could that
yeah.
import namespace be any you know, bit like
Yeah,
the link
any-
namespace, you know, the XML namespace?
No. So what you want to do is work with the variance namespaces, the BIML
Okay,
API, and then remember what I'm doing here. And this is why I think it's probably referenced by this namespace in their code, right?
Yeah.
So you would do a double reference there. You wouldn't need it. You only have to reference one you want. Okay, now, so how do I know? Because one of the problems here is, and I don't want to run out of time before I show you the other, but one of the problems here is, well, you know, I can't really tell what I'm getting back. And it's not going to compile, you know, like a normal C# code in Visual Studio. So one of the things I like to do is, there's another thing out there called LinkPad. How many people have used LinkPad? Okay, this is a great little feature. If you haven't used it, I use LinkPad a lot. And so in LinkPad, I'm going to load my query here. And it's not exactly the same, so you're going to have to massage it to run here. But you'll notice I have the command. What I do is I come into, where is that, query properties. You'll notice I have the BIML engine DLL referenced. I have the Windows base.dll referenced, and then I have an additional namespaces referenced. So all these, and there's actually out there, I'll add this to the file deck, but where is it? Here. And there's BIML tip using LinkPad. Somebody else did this, so I can't disorderly data. I don't know what the guy's name is. Here I'm using Ken Arm. Never met him. He's a great guy. So I use LinkPad to write C#, and I just followed his setting up LinkPad in BIML here, and there's all the stuff. So I didn't reproduce it. All right, but I will add that to into my slide deck, so in case anybody downloads them they want. And it goes through, and it's actually a great thing to save me. Because then when I come over on LinkPad, I can go in here and say, then you'll start to see, I'm doing that command, and then I'm going to do a connection string. Here I'm using schema manager.connection doing it, and then tables to import. Here's where I get data table of type data rows r0.toString, and then I'm going to loop through these, and I'm going to say if table name dot starts with dim, do this, and then the thing you do is to get it to the screen, you just say table name dot dump. Here I have sk dot dump because I want to check the SKs, and here I have column get BIML dot dump. So I go ahead and run that. You'll notice I can do a quick check here. So here's the first one, dim customer. I'm making the SK customer key, so that's good for me. And then here's all the BIML that it's going to do to convert this BIML from, a table. So one of the things we can do here is and I've done this before too, I actually create databases that mirror my production databases, but the only thing they're there for is schema. They don't hold any data. So I can pull that schema and automatically create my BIML from that schema. So then if you come in here and you look at that, that's really what I'm doing. And so the table source connection here is, so there's two connections. This is my connection out to my config database. This is my connection into my data warehouse. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to pull out, let me just highlight this and move it over to the other. And so you'll notice that I'm going through and looping through each of those tables, and I'm going to check and see if one of the table names out there in the data warehouse is going to equal one of the ones that I'm saying go ahead and create. All right. Because I only want to create an update table, these are actually creating update tables, so I only want to create update tables for data warehouse dimensions that actually exist. All right, so if you look at it, then you go down further, I'm going to actually come up with a key that I want. And the reason I'm doing this is because I'm pulling all my metadata from my dimensions defined in my data warehouse. Well, and I'm creating an update table, right? Well, in my update table, I don't want the surrogate key, right? The surrogate key is only for my warehouse, okay? So when I loop through these tables, I'm going to say, first of all, the table name is going to be whatever equals table name updates. Throw it in the staging schema. Then I'm going to loop through the columns, and I'm going to say if that column name does not equal SK, which was my customer's SK or whatever I wanted to create, then I'm going to say column.getBIML, and it's going to write the BIML code for it. Okay. So remember, last time I actually hard-coded the BIML code for each update table, or each staging table. Now I've made it even easier because I don't even have to do that. I just point to my warehouse. My warehouse will say in my config thing, and I'll say, okay, create me these update tables. So it first checks and makes sure that the dimension exists in my warehouse. If it exists in my warehouse and I want to create it as an update table, I go through and I create it as an update. So I could spit out 50 dimensions, update dimension tables in a second. And if you look, that's not that horrible of C#. So then, once I get that, then all I got to do is create the tables, right? So here's that, and this is actually the same code I had before, right? So the same code I had before is if the table type is staged, then go ahead and drop and create DDL. So let me go ahead and run this one. Generate, I think it was. And there we are. And I only created 2 because it's a demo, but I mean, I've, in a production consulting gig, I actually created 100 of these at one time, right? But, it's gonna take me 2 weeks, man. So, there you go. All right, so, and the big thing here is remember if you had to make changes or make any changes, you could have as many packages as you want. If you wanted to create one package for every table, you just alter your script, and then here you have, instead of doing this loop here, as a task, you just put it up there and do it as a package. All right.
Presumably your end tag for your C# bit has to go.
Right, it'd have to go down below
yeah.
whatever it is. And that's where you have to kind of massage it over here in the midst and make sure, unfortunately, there's nothing, you can't like right click and say check for errors in here. It'd be nice if you could. There's no, once you combine it all, it's.
So is this really just giving you kind of a pretty formatting so you can see?
This is formatting so I don't go crazy in Visual Studio with all the squigglies because that just drives me nuts. Here, I see the formatting, the blue, the black and the yellow, so, and the red, that's the way my brain works because I'm used to that formatting, so.
But your link pack gives you some ability to
The-
dry run and see what some of the outputs.
Yeah,
So
and
it's-
actually the link here, remember, I actually don't have the activate auto completion one, which is like $30, which I really should because I use it enough. But if you're over here, you notice you'll be calling that API, so you can do your dot and then check out your API here. The difference is you're not spitting it out to BIML, you're spitting it out to a screen. So this actually sets it up for me so I know I'm getting data back, I'm getting the right kind of data back, and then I take this little part down here and I end up doing, actually, here's the BIML too, but all I have to do is replace this with my BIML tags that I want to hard code in back here in the variance. So once you start getting a little more complicated, then you're right, a lot of times I'll start out here, get the C# code the way I want it, then I'll move it over to here, get the BIML the way I want it, and then I'll copy and paste it.
Why is each line less than hashtag and in bottom?
Can you do it? I just do it that way.
Okay.
That's just my own convention, so that I know it'll be yellow. I know a yellow start is a line of C# code.
Okay.
Okay, you can take those out. My
Just-
brain works better if I do it this way.
So you could just start and end.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Right, good question. All right, so now just to show you what you're building up to. My final project here is open. And I want to show you what I'm actually running here. This may not be the full, no, this is the full. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually build a load where I'm actually going to load up a type 1 dimension. So we get a little more complicated. But if you start out and build it in steps, which I'm going to show you here, you can actually keep your sanity. And so the first thing is create load metadata. You'll notice that that's the same as I did before, I'm going out and grabbing from my config table. And then I'm gonna actually load a bunch more stuff in here because I'm doing a lot more. But you'll notice I'm just using annotation tags. Those annotation tags give me like what the table type is. It's a target, source table, whatever was the first. Here's the source table name, so it's actually the second column. The source table key, the source attributes, the default schema, and a column list. Okay, so all that's entered in my metadata driving table, and I'm going to create the tables here using the table name, and then let's see. Yeah, just creating the table name here. And then if we take a look at the other one, so that was create load metadata. This is actually just going out and doing my connections and schemas. So I have a source and a thing. And then in this one, I'm just going to step one, I'm going to build this up for us here in the next 5 minutes. But what we have here is the containers. And so in this process, we're going to say, okay, load dim customer type 1, constraint linear, and then I'm going to say task container, data processing, and then I just put in a SQL, truncate the dim customer updates. And then I'm going to have a container called successful loading closeout and another one called failure loading closeout. Notice here is where you tell it which direction to go. So in this I have the input to the precedent constraints is going to the container, excuse me, and so I have the container, then I have precedent constraints, inputs, and so the input to this would be the data processing output, okay, which was just the name of this container. All right, and evaluation value was success, okay. Here we have data processing output, evaluation value is failure. This gets to the point of me saying of creating templates for people, because I always want to have a container that sends an email if it fails. Okay, if it's success, I always want a container that writes out the number of rows that came through. So I create this, give it to everybody, and this is what they'll start their package off with. So if we go ahead and run that, you'll notice now I have it. So I have my data processing, I have my successful load and closeout. Now it's not doing much, but you know, in real world it would have a whole bunch of stuff. But nobody else would have to touch that because that's just stock stuff that I do in every package. And here too, you wouldn't have to, there's stock variables I use and all that. So everybody on my team would know, you know, that has to be there. It's not going to get through code review. Now, if I go over to step 2, I'm going to say, okay, close this one. And let me close that guy and bring up step 2. So the next step I would say would be start building everything, but it's hard-coded, you know, into one customer. So here I have truncate. Then I'm going to say source. So the source here is going to be select star from ods.dbo.customer. And then I'm going to do a lookup. So notice here's a lookup, get target key. And then the source columns and so forth. If I keep going down here, I'm going to do, this is one that is really interesting because usually I use a hash to figure out and hash up my type 1 attributes. Okay, so you can actually do custom components in here. So if it's not a stock SSIS component, you can still work with it. And all I did was went out and got this MHSB off of Codeplex, so it's a hash component. And then the component type is Martin. I guess Martin, great guy who made this. Don't know him. And then come down in here and there's multiple threads you can set, safe and all handling, and then all I've got to do is provide it with the input columns, and then it gives me a hashed output. All right, and then I get all the way down here and I say, okay, I'm going to have to do a conversion, so I convert from the hash byte into a string so I can do a comparison, because you can't really compare hash bytes successfully with if you don't. There's a kind of a quirky thing. But so we convert them back to strings to compare the hash bytes. And then so I want to do, if it's a new column, changed records. So here I say, okay, is null customer key from lookup? If it is null, then we know that that's a new record. And then changed records, I say, okay, the hash strings don't equal each other. If they do equal each other, then I know I'm passing in a record that's already there, so don't load it up. All right, and then I have the outputs insert into dim, and then an output down here, and then I have a update statement. DBO inner join with updates and so forth, and then all that is just the same as before. So now I create this. So I do the first two here and run this. And now you'll notice it's pretty more, looking a little more intense here. So if I go in here, I look at it, here's my lookup, there's my hash, there's my convert, and there's my compare, and then I'm going to update staging, or I'm going to say update insert into dim. All right, so new records change record. Now, this was all hard-coded, right? So I want to get it hard-coded with one example, make sure it works. Then I start replacing the hard-coded values with my, so in step 3 here, now is when I start going, okay, for each table in root node.table, get the string column name, if it equals staging, so I'm not going to go through all this code, but you'll notice now I don't have that hard-coded customer table. I just have table name, and all this stuff is handled in is from that staging table back here. All right, and notice one other thing to point out here, for each column, all I'm doing is I'm splitting out that string that I had of my attribute columns and building columns with it. All right, so then I come down and then I have hash input. Here I have is null and then the SKA value from lookup, so all that. And now I can create the same thing I had before, and it should come out exactly the same for each table. I only have one table. Should be one, but
So when you go in from the step where you've got things hard-coded to the step then where you're starting to use for loops and so on and so
Yeah.
is there any merit in keeping your DTSS package that you had before, save it off to one side and do a diff between the two to see?
yeah, I mean, I use that all the time. So
Alright, so-
yeah, if I put that string where it wasn't supposed to be, I always compare to make sure I'm getting the output I want. And then once you know it for that one, then you're done. Then you just fill in your config kit. But yeah, that definitely helps out. So now I come in here and you'll notice I didn't have any of this hard coded. It's pulling it out from this table here. Now it's only looking for type 1s, not type 2, so it should only be one table. So if I look here, and notice this one is going to create a package for each table. And here's type 1. And then if I look at load, you'll notice same thing here. We have the hash. It picked up all those attributes, loaded them in there. So now I can actually, the guy doesn't even have to be a BI developer. I can tell any SQL developer, hey, this is where you're going to put your attribute columns, this is where you're going to put your source key, tell it what type it wants, and run it. So that's pretty nice stuff. So hopefully this has got you thinking about, jumping into this. Now there's a learning curve at the beginning. Okay.
Really?
But if you work with this for 2 weeks, you're going to be productive on it, and then you're going to save yourself a lot of time in SSIS.
I was going to ask if you could do a script task. There's probably no point, is there?
What's that?
A script task.
You can do script tasks, and there is a big point in that. So if I have to do any custom coding that I want, you just go out and do a script task. And actually, I keep the script task. And if you go up, I did want to show you guys. I'm running over, but I did want to show you this because this helped me a lot when I first got out there. Is if you go out to this BIMLScript and I have it set up as a favorite. It's somewhere on the site. BIML snippets. It's actually on the very next thing. So here's my BIML snippets. So if I come down here and I want to do, I want to go down to SQL tasks. Here's a file system or execute SQL parameters. Here's so it actually gives me an example of it, and then I just take this and design it to what I want. All right. So there's a little BIML. I never run anything myself. If I can steal it from somebody. Lazy programs are the best programs. All right. So yeah, there's a merge join. I learned how to do that. Sorts. Which shouldn't be used. All right. So again, believe me, the first time you do it, just go out and pick some simple stuff, get yourself wet with it, and then just start building on it, and you'll be really great when you did in 2 weeks to a month. All right.
If you're looking for
All right.
a demo, there's a really good one by Andy Leonard, Stairway to BIML on SQL Server Central.
Yeah, SQL
Which is-
Server Central has.
It's a very simple sort of
Yeah,
example
but
of those
their
stuff.
steroid,
It
yeah, their
works- it
steroid
works for
stuff's
me.
pretty good. I like it.
It worked for me, and I don't do C#.
Yeah.
So I was able to get
Yeah.
something out of it.
Well, I do have. Does anybody want? I actually have 2 of my books. Actually, I pulled the wrong book. But if anybody wants to learn how to do C#, I will give away 2 of these. So does everybody want to be in it, or is there? I mean, if you're a beginner, this is great. If you're a seasoned C#, it's not for you, but you could give it away as a gift to somebody. So this is the way I always do it. Don't shout out yet. But I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 10.
7.
Go ahead.
9.
3.
2.
4.
That's amazing. 5.
6.
Nobody got it yet.
10.
No.
1.
9.
Pretty close.
8.
Who said 8? It never ceases. Okay, this one's gonna be quick. Ready? I think I have a number between 1 and 5.
5.
3.
2.
2. Who said 2 first?
You go with
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So, George, thanks for coming.